Welcome back to Old School Sports and our OOTP 23 playthrough of the Kansas City Royals. We have just completed the 2026 regular season. Was a fantastic regular season for the Royals, a 99-63 record, won the American League Central by 17 games. Best record in the American League, best record in baseball. So we will have home field advantage for as long as the Royals are still playing in the playoffs. Our first round matchup is going to be either against the 87-win Toronto Blue Jays or the 83-win Los Angeles Angels, depending on who wins their best 2 out of 3 wild card series. Before we get started with picking out our playoff roster, I want to check on a few things. In our past episode, we checked on a few of the players that we traded away or moved on from this past offseason. Did kind of forget one important player, Kris Bubic, who we traded near the end, or right at the end of spring training, to the Orioles when he refused a minor league assignment. He had a rough year with the Orioles, 5.14 ERA over 152 thirds innings pitched. He did start 32 games for them, so he, as always, was reliable, healthy, and going out there every fifth day, but definitely a worse season in his first year with the Orioles than he had typically been putting up for us on the Kansas City Royals. Also wanted to mention that after this 99-win season, we have offered Byron Nichols a contract extension as our manager. You'll remember he took over this year from Mike Matheny. Nichols, excellent with development, excellent with mechanics, good with handling aging. His relationships overall are good. Unlike Mike Matheny, he actually gets along reasonably well with most of our pitchers. Not a great relationship with Hayden Wesneski, but Hayden Wesneski still made his first All-Star team this year under Byron Nichols. So we have made an offer to him to bring him back as manager next season since his contract will be up. Also, just looking at the staff cohesion, still excellent, ecstatic with staff cohesion. Everyone except our team trainer has good relationships, and you can see there we have made an offer to extend Byron Nichols, so we will see what he has to say. Checking in on player development quickly, made a modest improvement over the course of the season to 14th. We were 15th the last time we checked in. Have obviously traded away a lot of younger talent over the last couple off seasons to bring some big players on board. Trevor Rogers, a couple seasons ago at this point, 3 seasons ago really, and then also traded for Ryan Lagerwell this offseason where we had to give up a couple of key prospects. But with the Royals putting together a second consecutive playoff season and a fourth consecutive winning season, we're content to have moved on from some of those prospects, strengthen the major league roster, because our goal is to make a long playoff run and hopefully even get into the World Series and maybe win it all this year. When you're in the playoffs, you got the best record in baseball, you got home field advantage. Certainly getting to the World Series is the minimum of what we need for this year to be a success. And if we're able to get there, obviously the hope would be that we can win it all. And the last thing I'm going to change before we figure out the playoff roster is Spencer Bauer is the only starter we have who is fragile, was injured part of the year, came back at the end of the season, had a real nice year with 142 strikeouts and 107 and a third innings. We are going to loosen the leash a little bit and at least let him throw 100 pitches in the playoffs. No pitch limit on our other starters in the playoffs for all of those who are normal in terms of their injury proneness. But hey, this is the time of year when we want our best arms out there. So if we can get another 10 pitches out of Bauer, that could definitely be an extra inning a game if he's pitching particularly efficiently. And looking at the proposed playoff roster, kind of the typical 5 outfielders with Sal Frelich, Young-Hoo Lee, Kyle Lewis, Peyton Williams. Waiting to hear about this injury from Stephen Paulini. Obviously, if he ends up with a more serious injury, may need to take him off of the squad. The infield is the starters: Lopez at short, Witt at third, Horner at second, and Pratto at first, with Brooks Lee and Zach DeCenzo as the utility infielders. And then Reese McGuire, the backup catcher, and MJ Melendez, our starting catcher. So no real decisions to make as far as our position players, unless Paulini ends up hurt. Presumably would bring up a Tyler Gentry, Alexander Vargas, or Jesus Rivera, I think would be the most likely players to bring up in the event that we do end up with an injury for Paulini that takes him out a little longer. Looking at our pitchers, though, we may have a little more to think about here. Obviously, our great closer, Austin Roberts, Nick Anderson, who we traded for from the Yankees, Aaron Ashby, a key arm in our bullpen, R.J. Dabovich, Reid Goleman, Mackenzie Gore, Hayden Wisniewski. And the top four starters, Spencer Bauer, Luis Castillo, Caleb Lagerwell, and Trevor Rogers, will definitely make the roster. I think our only questions are around Dylan Coleman. 30-year-old reliever, split the season between Omaha and KC, put up a respectable 3.91 ERA at Kansas City this year. And then Ricky Vanasco, who just pitched the last game of the season for us yesterday after some injuries. He was really good before he got hurt. You can see he put up a 2.58 ERA over 66 and a third innings pitched. But he has been rough in Omaha in his 2 rehab starts. And then even yesterday in his last game of the season, gave up only 1 hit, but it was a home run, and he walked 5 over 3 innings. You can see that his control is always going to be an issue. He won't be starting for us as our 5th starter, and I just don't know how I feel about potentially bringing someone with such bad control into a potentially high-pressure situation in a playoff game. So going to give a little thought to whether Vanasco or Dylan Coleman will lose their spot to a Will Goebel, a Scott Kobos if we want a lefty, Tyler Bosma, who was up all year, or Will Klein. Those are the options we have, so we're going to give that a little bit of thought right now. In terms of thinking about Kobos, the lefty, we've got Trevor Rogers in our rotation, and we do right now have just 2 arms in the bullpen that are lefty, Aaron Ashby and Mackenzie Gore, so that could definitely encourage us to bring on Kobos potentially as one of the additions to the playoff roster. And Tyler Bosma was up with the big team all season. He's also a lefty, but he's pretty similar versus righties and lefties in terms of his stuff movement and control, so doesn't necessarily have great splits there. He was fine, 4.48 ERA over 84 and a third innings pitched. He was once one of the top prospects in our system, has had some injuries, and you can see is almost 27 years old now, just hasn't developed exactly as expected. So even though he was on the roster all year, feel a little better with the veteran Dylan Coleman taking the spot. He pitched a little better at the major league level this season than Bosma. We are going to bring up Scott Kobos, though. Had a rough year in KC, but he did pitch better towards the end. You can see a 5.95 ERA in 19 and 2/3 innings pitched. But he was lights out in AAA this year, and you look at his splits, righty versus lefty. He's got 65 stuff, 65 movement, and 60 control against left-handed pitchers. Think that a pitcher like that could potentially be useful in a big spot. So we are going to take Vanasco out of the lineup and bring Kobos up to join the bullpen, give us a third left-handed arm out of the bullpen, so hopefully Byron Nichols has as much flexibility as possible. So we're going to see what happens in terms of this injury with Stephen Paulini over the next couple days before we get into our playoff series. Hopefully it's not too serious, because looking at the injured list right now, we're in really good shape as long as Paulini doesn't end up on it. Zach Wheeler still is going to retire at the end of the season after the career-ending injury. but we picked up Luis Castillo to replace him, so don't even look at that. It's obviously a bit of a loss because Luis Castillo, even though he was very good for us with a 5-3 record, 3.06 ERA, and 82 and a third innings pitched, is definitely not a Zach Wheeler in his prime. But hopefully we can get a ring for Zach Wheeler, even though he's on the IL here in his final season as a professional baseball player. And unfortunately, Stephen Paulini is going to be out for 2 weeks with a sprained elbow. Definitely not optimal. He actually led the team with 548 at-bats this year, so he was pretty much in the lineup just about every day. Was only a league average type offensive player with a 98 OPS plus and a 101 WRC plus, so I think we can survive without him, but obviously not optimal that he's going to be on the playoff IL for at least our first series, and we'll see how he heals up. So one more decision to make now as far as who to bring up to the roster to replace him. Tyler Gentry would be an obvious option, given that he's also an outfielder. Hit 276 and 29 at-bats with the big club this year. Melvin Moreno is out for another couple of weeks with the torn meniscus. He's obviously a really good glove. Could have been an interesting option. Alexander Vargas, who we picked up on waivers from San Diego a little less than a year ago, hit 282 and 39 at-bats. Have a hard time believing he's really that good of an offensive player with a 123 OPS plus and a 129 WRC plus when you just look at his batting ratings. He is versatile defensively, has a little bit of speed, could potentially be a pinch runner for us. Jesus Rivera, the guy that we picked up in that Bubic trade that we mentioned, hit only 217 and 46 at-bats at the major league level, but very good defensively, and I think potentially a little bit better of a bat than Melvin Moreno, and also very fast, can lay down a bunt, could be an interesting player to have on the roster. Ricardo Cabrera, probably not ready yet. He's on the 40-man. He is a young prospect, only not even 22 years old yet, that we picked up from the Yankees in the Salvador Perez trade when we started out this sim. Got his first action in AAA this year and did hit 272. Again, profiles as a solid defensive infielder, and he probably has the best potential bat of any of the players that we've mentioned. It's just that he's not really completely developed yet, has never played in the majors. That would be a interesting choice. And then Alberto Osuna, probably the most established bat at this point. Only had 20 at-bats at the major league level this year and hit just a $150. Only plays first base, and he's not great defensively, but does probably have the strongest bat if we need a pinch hitter in a pinch, so to speak. So going to be an interesting decision to figure out who we want to put on this roster. And I think the decision is going to come down to Tyler Gentry, who would take the outfield spot, can play, corner outfield or first base in a pinch, has a hopefully close to major league average bat, so could potentially pinch hit for us if we needed him to. The other option is Jesus Rivera. Not as good of a bat, but not a horrible bat. Just doesn't have much power. Again, a player who you could use as a pinch runner if you needed to, and then just a lot of defensive versatility. I don't see us being in a lot of situations where we would be pinch hitting for a Bobby Witt Jr. or a Nico Horner or a Nikki Lopez, but if one of those players gets banged up, or there is a situation where we want to go on a lefty on righty or a righty on lefty kind of matchup and need to pinch hit with somebody else, he could come in and play pretty decent defensively for us anywhere towards the end of a game if we were trying to hold on to a lead. So they are both interesting options. I really don't know what to do. And as we're thinking about the playoff roster, some interesting news here. Byron Nichols says he's not in the market for a new job right now when we offered him a contract extension. So we gave him the opportunity to become a manager when we fired Matheny, moved him from bench coach to manager. But it looks like he may be secretly talking to someone else who's offering him some big bucks. So we'll revisit things maybe in the coming weeks before the end of the season. But it seems like we may be looking for a manager again this year, even though we don't necessarily really want to. So interesting development there with Mr. Nichols. And as I think around about the playoff roster, I'm going to pull an audible on what I was saying to you not that long ago. You look at our backup infielders. Brooks Lee, capable hitter, can play second base or shortstop. And then Zach DeCenzo, also a capable-ish hitter, although he strikes out a lot, and he can play first, second, or third. So I don't really feel that we need Rivera's defensive versatility, given that Lopez, Horner, and Bobby Witt Jr. are all pretty darn good defensive players. So that would lead me to Gentry, but when I look at Gentry and I compare him to Alberto Osuna, I think Alberto Osuna has a little bit better bat. He doesn't really have anywhere defensively to play, but is just a potential pinch hitter. I'm intrigued by Osuna. Hit 17 homers with a 119 OPS plus, 124 WRC plus in AAA this year. You compare that to Gentry, who was 128 OPS plus, 136 WRC plus. It seems like Gentry was a little better. But I'm going to go with Osuna. So Osuna is going to be replacing Mr. Paulini on the playoff roster for at least our first round series. And the wild card playoff series are done, and we are going to be hosting the Los Angeles Angels, who beat the Blue Jays 2-1, starting against the Angels today. Ooh, interesting. They are going to have Trevor Bauer on the mound. Does not look like the real-life issues that impacted Trevor Bauer impacted him in this version of OOTP. So will be interesting to be going up against Mr. Bauer in Game 1 of this playoff series. And the Angels had an 83-79 record, so we were 16 games better than them during the regular season. Hopefully that means that we will be able to get through this first round playoff series. We're going to have our ace, Trevor Rogers, going up against their ace, Trevor Bauer, in Game 1. Most likely Spencer Bauer for us in Game 2 against Chris Rodriguez. And then they're saying that we're going to be starting Hayden Wisniewski in Game 3. I think that's just because our players are not completely rested yet, but I would have a hard time imagining that we're going to be going with Hayden Wisniewski in Game 3, and would also have a hard time imagining that they're going to go right back to Trevor Bauer in Game 3. But we'll see. Still a pretty powerful lineup for them with Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani, Luke Murphy, Jonathan Lasaiga, and the aforementioned Trevor Bauer as the top 5 players on the Angels roster. So as we get ready for the playoff series, we did have a 4-3 record against the Angels this year. Hopefully we can get at least 3 more wins against them in this series. We were 4th in the AL in runs scored, 1st in runs against. They were 13th in the AL in runs scored and 6th in runs against. So the Royals are definitely big favorites as this series begins, and as I mentioned, our ace, Trevor Rogers, 15-6 with a 2.80 ERA on the mound in Game 1 against Trevor Bauer, who was 9-13 with a 4.34 ERA, although he did strike out 221 batters in 186 and 2/3 innings. So let's hope the Royals can get this playoff series off to a good start. We lost 2-0, even though we had the home field advantage to the Yankees in the wild card series last year. Would love to get this series off to a start with a win here in Game 1. And I did not want to do that. I do that every year. You can see that I am really basically a pure GM, and I don't sim through any games during the regular season because I always click the play button rather than the simulate button. And Kansas City with a 4-3 win. Looks like a rally at the end. Roberts with the win in the bullpen. Lasaiga with the loss in relief. And Bobby Witt Jr. with a home run. Let's take a look at that box score. We were down 2 runs early. 3 runs in the bottom of the 9th. Bobby Witt, a 3-run home run to give the Yankees a walk-off. So, really big day for Bobby Witt Jr. Walk-off 3-run home run in the bottom of the 9th. You can see Rogers pitched fine, Goleman with some decent relief, and then Ashby turned it over to Roberts, who gave up that run in the 9th. But then we got 3 back in the bottom of the 9th to secure the victory. So good start to the series for the Kansas City Royals, up 1-0 here in our AL Division Series against the Los Angeles Angels. And I did miss that Trevor Bauer actually did not end up starting for the Angels. They ended up starting Ronaldo Lopez instead. So moving here to Game 2, looks like it is going to be Bauer against Bauer. Trevor Bauer, who we've already talked about, on the mound for the Angels, and then Spencer Bauer, the youngster, back off the injured list, going for the Royals as we try to hopefully take a 2-0 lead and put our stamp on this series early. And it is not to be, as Los Angeles beats us 7-2 to pull even in this series. We got another homer from Nick Pratto, but obviously gave up a lot of runs. Spencer Bauer, a rough game, 4 earned runs over 4 innings. Mackenzie Gore, ugly relief outing with 3 earned runs in an inning pitched. Got better after that with Kobos and Coleman doing the cleanup work. Trevor Bauer only went 3 innings, so the win went to Parker Mashinsky. But rough game for the Royals here. Never really had a chance. Gave up 4 runs in the 2nd inning, another 3 in the 6th. So we were down 7-0. Picked up 2 in the 7th, but not a great day for the Royals. So the series is tied 1-1, and we are heading out to Los Angeles. So they have taken a home field advantage away from us. Hopefully we can get at least one in LA to get the series back to KC. So we are in Los Angeles now for a pivotal Game 3. Shohei Ohtani on the mound for the Angels. 12-8 record with a 4.29 ERA for the great two-way player. The Royals will counter with Luis Castillo. We mentioned he was 5-3 with a 3.06 ERA after we traded for him midway through the year from the Mets. He is our replacement for Zach Wheeler. So let's hope that he delivers a Zach Wheeler-like performance here in this pivotal Game 3 of the playoffs. And unfortunately, it doesn't look like he did. Kind of a reversal of Game 2 where Roberts got the win over Lasaiga in a game that went to the bullpens. Lasaiga evened things up and got the win over Roberts here in Game 3. So the Royals' backs are quickly against the wall here in the divisional series. Looks like Ian Happ, Shohei Ohtani, and Brett Baty all hit home runs for the Angels. Shohei Ohtani, nice performance, solid game, 3 earned runs and 9 strikeouts in 6 1/3 innings. Turned it over to Silseth, who was not good, but they got enough. We were in control of this game. Luis Castillo, 2 earned runs over 5 1/3 innings. Goleman and Ashby with clean relief. And then we turned it over to our ace, Austin Roberts, and gave up 4 earned runs over an inning and a third, including 2 home runs. So just a really rough finish. We had a 3-2 lead headed into the 9th inning. We scored a couple of runs to make it 5-2. They came back with 3 runs in the 9th, and then they got a win with a run in the 10th when Kevin Biggio had a sac fly against Austin Roberts to give them the win. So real tough game for Austin Roberts, and a real tough situation for the Royals, now down 2-1 here in this AL Division Series. So we are to Game 4 of the series. The best record in baseball, the best pitching staff in baseball doesn't mean anything right now. The Angels are up 2-1 on the Royals, so the Royals need to win 2 in a row to continue our season. We will have Caleb Lagerwell on the mound. Made the big trade for him last offseason. Came back to the Royals and went 13-8 with a 3.07 ERA. So he did everything we would have hoped. Let's hope he can come through with a win today in the playoffs for the Royals. Going against Chris Rodriguez, 7-7 with a 3.69 ERA. So Royals want to win this game today to get it back to Kansas City for a deciding Game 5. And it is not to be. So after a brilliant 99-63 regular season, the best record in baseball, Royals take Game 1 in the series and then lose 3 in a row to fall 3-1 to the Los Angeles Angels. Mike Trout got the MVP award for the series. Lagerwell with a rough outing, 4 earned runs in 3 2/3 innings. Got solid relief from Cobos, Coleman, and Mackenzie Gore after that, but could not get the offense going. We got a run off of Rodriguez, their starter, and then they turned it over to their bullpen and only allowed 2 hits over the last 5 1/3 innings. So rough line for Kansas City, just 5 hits on the day. Doesn't look like there were any extra base hits. So a very disappointing finish to what was hoped to be a special season for these Royals. It is special, I guess, in the sense that they had the best record in baseball and they got back to the playoffs for the 2nd straight year, but we're absolutely looking for more than a exit in the ALDS. So have to view the season as a disappointment. There's no other way around it. And looking at the playoff tree, the Royals are the only team that's even been eliminated yet. The Red Sox could clinch against the Astros today, and then the Padres are up 2-0 on the Dodgers, and the Cardinals and the Brewers are 1-1. So real disappointing result for these Kansas City Royals to get knocked out so early. And as we start to pivot towards preparation for the off-season, we'll see if maybe we can get Nichols to accept an offer from us to come back as manager. He's looking for $1.845 million a year. We offered him less than that last time. That could be part of the reason why he said he didn't want to come back to us. That seems like an incredible amount of money for a guy that's just got 1 year of experience as a manager. We'll see if, $1.75 million, whether he would consider that, or otherwise we may need... Oh, he has accepted it. So he was playing hardball with us before. He wanted a little money, may have gotten us to panic a little bit, but at least we will have Mr. Nichols back as our manager next year when we try to build on what we did this season. Going to be an interesting year. We're only having about $6 million that's coming off the books at this point. Some of our arbitration-eligible players, notably Sal Frelich, going to start making some bigger money. Also potential for Hayden Wisniewski after that All-Star appearance to make bigger money than expected. And MJ Melendez is going to be making some big money too. Going to be interesting to see what happens with the player option that Kyle Lewis has, and then we're going to have a team option on second baseman Nico Horner. So we're going to have a lot of big decisions to make as we get into the 2026 to 2027 offseason. Want to take some time to think about what went well and what didn't go well this season. I feel like the regular season, other than the injury to Wheeler, went just about perfectly. We had just about everybody on the team healthy when we got to the playoffs. The only exception was obviously Paulini, but that's not the reason we lost the series. So that happens sometimes in baseball, happens sometimes in all playoffs. We were 16 games better than the Angels in the regular season. We won the season series 4-3, and they still dumped us 3-1 in the best of 5 playoff series. So before we move on to the off season, I'm going to do a full review of who were the key performers for our team this year. It was really a nice season. 99-63 should have been 104-58 according to the Pythagorean record. Had a winning record every month of the season except for the 5 games we played in March. Finished in September really strong, 14-7, and just couldn't continue in the playoffs with that great play. Team batting, we were first in batting average, first in on-base percentage, first in WAR, first in hits, first in strikeouts, first in stolen bases, and first in base running. Overall, we're 4th in runs scored. So put together a good offense, only 145 home runs and only 460 extra base hits. So we did it just through the good batting average and good base running and getting guys on base and moving them around. Still were able to score a lot of runs, and then the pitching was absolutely incredible. We were first in every pitching category except for walks, where we finished 10th. Also first in defensive efficiency, first in zone rating. Can't ask for anything better than that. Obviously going to have some holes to fill on the pitching staff next year with the retirement of Wheeler, and then also Luis Castillo presumably is going to be looking for some big money. So we will have Rogers back. We will have Wisniewski back probably, as a potential 5th starter. Spencer Bauer will be back, and Caleb Lagerwell will be back. So we know that we've got our top 3. We know that Wisniewski potentially could be back at the back end of the rotation, but will we need to find a number 4 starter, or could it end up being a Wisniewski or a Vanasco or a Mackenzie Gore or somebody else? We'll have to make those decisions in the off season. And we'll take a look at that brilliant pitching staff now. Trevor Rogers is everything we've wanted in an ace. 15-6 record this year, 185 strikeouts in 106 2/3 innings, 2.80 ERA, 149 ERA plus, 71 FIP minus, 4.6 pitcher WAR, which was the best in the American League, and a 3.17 Sierra. Expect the veteran lefty to be a strong contender for the American League Cy Young Award after he made an all-star team for the 3rd time this season. Second on the team in WAR, despite some time on the IL among pitchers, was Spencer Bauer. We've talked about him a lot. Continues to strike out people at a prodigious rate with 142 strikeouts in 107 1/3 innings. He's fragile. We're always going to need to nurse him along, but he has electric stuff and great movement. 5 pitches, 3 of which his fastball, slider, and knuckle curve are all exceptional. Also has a solid curve and a okay changeup that he's still working on, but he is going to be a very important part of this rotation going forward. And then Hayden Wisniewski mentioned that he made an all-star team for the first time, ended up starting 17 games for us because of some of the injuries. Really nice 2.97 ERA, 77 FIP minus over the course of 136 1/3 innings, 7-4 record with 2 saves for Mr. Wisniewski. Austin Roberts, our closer, despite the great disappointment in the playoffs, had another exceptional season, struck out 95 and 71 and two-thirds, led the American League in games with 74 and saves with 57, leading the AL in both of those categories for a second consecutive season. Also got a strong season from Aaron Ashby, left-handed reliever out of the pen, 58 and a third innings pitched, 73 strikeouts, 2.47 ERA, good for a 53 FIP minus, 2.55 SIERA, and put up a 2.1 WAR. And then the final pitchers that we had with WARs of 2 or higher, Caleb Lagerwell, mentioned the big trade for him, went 13 and 8 with a 3.07 ERA. We signed to a extension, buying out his arbitration years as well as 3 free agency years potentially. So he is going to be with us with Mr. Roberts and Mr. Bauer, hopefully fronting this rotation for the next several years. And then Reid Goleman also had a 2.0 WAR for us out of the bullpen. Another excellent season from him. 7-3 record, 111 strikeouts, over 85 and two-thirds innings pitched, 2.73 ERA. So got some incredible pitching performances, obviously, from this team that led the American League in just about every pitching category. Mentioned that Castillo was 5-3 in his half of the season with us. Zach Wheeler, final mention, 6-2 with a 3.15 ERA in his half season before he ended his career. Already talked about Ricky Vanasco. He could potentially be in the rotation next year. Same thing with Mackenzie Gore. Wisniewski, Vanasco, and Gore are the most obvious alternatives we have on the current roster right now for those 4 and 5 spots in the rotation. Looking at the rest of the team, Will Klein did okay with a 4.25 ERA while he was up. R.J. Dabovich, a 3.30 ERA and 94 strikeouts over 73 and two-thirds innings. He will be back in the bullpen. Zach Jacobs came up and pitched one brilliant game for us near the end of the year, gave up just 1 hit in 7 innings. Looking at his profile, he's another option for the back of the rotation. The 25-year-old was mediocre, I would say, this year overall. Put up a 4.33 ERA in AA, and then was better with a 3.15 ERA in AAA, and then was obviously exceptional in that one game that he pitched at the major league level. And actually, he started the year in high A ball, where he put up a 4.28 ERA before we moved him up. So pitched at 4 different levels this year: A+, AA, AAA, and Major League Baseball. Certainly a contender for a back end of the rotation spot next year. Scott Kobos, we talked about him, lefty out of the bullpen. Tyler Bosma, theoretically someone who's in the conversation for the back of the rotation, but I think it's unlikely. Would view everyone I previously mentioned, Wisniewski, Vanasco, Gore, and even Zach Jacobs, is better candidates for those 4th and 5th starts right now than Bosma is. Nick Anderson, who we traded for near the trade deadline from the Yankees, pretty meh. 3.80 ERA over 21 and a third innings pitched. 110 ERA plus was good. His 125 FIP minus was not good, and he ended up putting up a minus 0.2 WAR for us. Did get the Yankees to retain all of his contract. His vesting option will kick in since he pitched over 50 innings. So we will have him for free next year if we want him back. He may also end up being someone similar to what we did with Anthony Rendon this past offseason when we had him for a little or no dollar contract. If we can get something for Nick Anderson in a trade and some team wants to bring on a veteran, that may be something that we think about in the offseason also. Turning to our position players, Witt Jr. with a 6.5 WAR, by far the best on our team. missed some time with an injury and got off to a slow start this year, which meant that he did not make an all-star team. So he's made an all-star team in 3 of his first 5 seasons, but only 1 of the last 3. Still ended up having a nice year, 19 homers, 96 runs driven in, tied with his teammate Frelich for the lead with 40 stolen bases, and was caught just once. Absolutely incredible efficiency on the base paths from Witt Jr., even though for the first time in his career he did not have a 2020 homer and stolen base season. Ended up batting .280, .815 OPS plus, .121 WRC plus. If he hadn't missed, 20-ish games with injuries, I think he would have definitely been a strong MVP candidate this year. Still may get a few votes there, but the fact that he probably missed out on 60 or 70 at-bats, it's probably going to cost him a little bit since he wasn't in the lineup every day. A guy who was in the lineup most every day, Nikki Lopez, our shortstop, excellent defensive shortstop, still a fan favorite. Batted .272, 92 OPS plus, but still put up a 3.5 WAR thanks to his good defense. Got a similar WAR of 3.4 from MJ Melendez, who bounced back from his injury-plagued 2025 season to once again be our everyday starting catcher. 18 homers, 66 runs driven in, a .254 batting average, good for a 115 OPS plus, a 116 WRC plus. You can see Melendez with the bat has been incredibly consistent in what he puts up every year. He's a good defensive catcher, captain, great personality, a leader on the team. His salary is going to start getting higher, but certainly expect that he will be back with us as he heads into some of his more expensive arbitration years. Sal Frelich, we mentioned, picked him up in the trade of Juan Yepez. Very excited to have him on the team, tied with teammate Witt Jr. for the league lead with 40 steals. He also was very efficient, caught only 7 times, but that pales in comparison to the 1 time that Witt Jr. was caught stealing. Batted .282 on the season, 11 homers, 27 doubles, scored 89 runs, 119 OPS, 118 WRC plus. 119 OPS plus, if I could slow down and speak clearly to those of you who are still patiently listening to me. And then Nico Horner, the last player who had a WAR of above 3 for us, has won a Gold Glove in all 4 of his seasons with the Royals. We'll see what happens this offseason. Another great personality, leader on the team. Hit .287 for us, good for a 103 OPS plus, 102 WRC plus. We've got an option on him for $10 million for this final year of his contract. So we've had a ton of stability since we took over this team. We traded away Salvador Perez early in the 2022 season, and since then it has been MJ Melendez at catcher, Nick Pratto at first, Nico Horner at second, Nicky Lopez at short, and Witt Jr. at third for the past 4.5 full seasons, except when those guys have been hurt. So we've had a lot of stability with a lot of good defensive players in our catcher and infield. Our outfield has been a little bit more of a revolving door historically, but the decision on Horner will be, the first big decision we have to make as to whether we break up that infield that's been together for close to 5 seasons pretty much every day. Jung-Hoo Lee, the controversial right fielder that we brought over from Korea, .312 batting average and a .368 on-base percentage, which is, kind of what we were looking for, someone to be a good top-of-the-order player for us. He batted second most of the year. Not as good a base stealer as a Witt Jr. or a Frelich. He did steal 9 bases. 108 OPS plus, 108 WRC plus, 2.7 WAR on the season. So he was a positive impact offensively, Was he worth $17.5 million? It's hard for me to say that he was. Hopefully he will get better in his second year in the majors next year. Only started 99 games for us, was on the IL off and on a few times. The thing that was most surprising with me was that he only had 22 doubles. I could see over the course of a full season him, coming close to doubling that number if he's in the lineup every day. But was happy to see that he was well over a 300 batter, did a pretty good job getting on base in the second position in our lineup. But hopefully we'll get more from him next year. As I've talked about in the past, he can play center field. He's not a great defensive center fielder, but with his 60 range, error, and arm, he's at least competent out there. Gives us a little optionality where we don't have to go chasing after somebody else if Kyle Lewis does decide to opt out of his contract when we get to the offseason. Got a 2.2 WAR from another new addition to the team, Stephen Paulini. Obviously disappointing that we didn't have him around for the playoffs. 239 batting average, not great, but very good eye. He walked 74 times, which allowed his on-base percentage to get up to 335. As I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, was basically a league average type hitter. 13 homers, 73 ribbies in those 548 at-bats. A competent corner outfielder, left-handed bat. Think that he is a player that can potentially still play a big role on this team going forward. Nick Pratto, as we've talked about, has been our first baseman for the last 4.5 years. Had a typical Nick Pratto year, which is 22 home runs, not bad, but a 218 batting average, which is not optimal. Did walk 57 times in 408 at-bats, or 57 times to be more accurate, while having 408 at-bats. So his OPS plus was still 111, same as his WRC plus. Solid season. He's a fan favorite, good work ethic. He is a solid defensive first baseman. Hasn't hit the way that we've really wanted him to, but we signed him his first season up in the majors and gave him a bit of a front-loaded contract. So he is only going to be making $4 million next year and then $3 million for the 3 seasons after that. He can't really play anywhere besides first base, so he's a first baseman or DH. The contact and the strikeouts are starting to become issues. Certainly a bat that we could potentially move on if we wanted to. We could certainly move on from him. But he's a decent bargain, and he's a solid first baseman. Zach DeCenzo right now would be the one who would take over from him, and he kind of has a similar profile. Not the best contact hitter, strikes out a lot, but has a really good power. The youngster got 332 at-bats this year, 18 homers, 66 ribbies, 238 batting average. Does not walk nearly as much as Pratto, so his OPS plus was 110, WRC plus 107. Better defensive first baseman than Pratto. So he's certainly an option, and at times during the year, Nichols had the two of them platooning, with Pratto starting at first baseman against right-handed pitching and DeCenzo starting at first baseman against left-handed pitching. Peyton Williams, like DeCenzo, a second-year player. Like DeCenzo, has really good home run power. Unlike DeCenzo, doesn't really have a position to play defensively. Hit 27 homers for the second consecutive season, drove in 81 runs. Issue is he doesn't hit for a high average, 233 batting average, but still put up a 113 OPS plus, 112 WRC plus. He is a player that, with his left-handed bat, if we did decide to move on from Pratto, we could potentially have a first base platoon of Peyton Williams and Zach DeCenzo if we decide it's time to move on from Pratto. But again, he's just not that expensive. The issue kind of is that Pratto, DeCenzo, and Williams are all kind of the same player. Really good power, but don't hit for much of a batting average, but still are overall, positive players to have on the team. Kyle Lewis, as I mentioned, is heading into a player option, final year of his contract. Very good defensive center fielder. His bat seems to be moving in the wrong direction. Just put up a 65 OPS plus and a 63 WRC plus for us this year. So you can see his WAR has dropped each of the last 3 seasons. Only 8 home runs and 486 at bats. With the fact that we have Lee on the team, although Lewis is a better defensive center fielder, would not really mind if he opted out of the contract. I think given that he's, going to be turning 32 years old towards the end of next season, and he hasn't hit that well over the last few years, I tend to think he probably will opt in, which is fine because Seattle is still paying 40% of his contract for us, so he's not going to be a crippling number for us on the budget, but probably not a long-term solution for us at center field. So we may need to turn it over to Young-Hoo Lee if Lewis decides to move on, or even if he doesn't start making plans for who our starting center fielder is going to be in 2028, because it's unlikely we'll have Lewis on the team after next season. And looking at the rest of the players, we got some respectable performances from some of our utility infielders. Alexander Vargas, like the fact that we added him off of the waiver wire. Think that him and Brooks Lee are both acceptable offensive bats with some pretty good defensive versatility, who should be our utility infielders, or at least in the mix as utility infielders going forward. Tyler Gentry hit okay when he was up as a outfielder. With the 5 outfielders we have, unless Kyle Lewis opts out, I don't know that there's an obvious spot for Gentry. He does still have option years left, so he could end up spending another season in Omaha for us. Reese McGuire, kind of the perfect backup catcher, a guy who's close-ish to a major league average hitter, at least based on his batting profile. Great personality, and then excellent defensively as a catcher. So he didn't hit as well this year with a 232 batting average, just a 58 OPS plus, but we are very content to have him as our backup catcher. The issue is how much we're going to be willing to pay him in arbitration. He made $2.1 million this year, expected to be making about $2.4 million next season. And then Jesus Rivera and Melvin Moreno, we've talked about both of them. Rivera, awesome defensive infielder. Melvin Moreno, the exact same thing. Awesome defensive infielder. Moreno out with a torn meniscus. Don't know that both need to be part of the organization, but certainly expect to keep one of them around. So we will have a lot of decisions to make in this upcoming offseason. The first thing will be to see what happens with the option year for Kyle Lewis, and then we're going to have to make the decision on our end on the option year for Nico Horner. Those will be the first big decisions we have to make. We'll have to see what type of budget ownership gives us. Think they should be happy with us as we achieved a winning record. We also achieved the profitability goal they gave for us a couple years early. The issue is that their big goal for us now is to reach the World Series by next season. So we have made steady progress in our winning percentage. We have made steady progress in our attendance. We've made steady progress with ownership increasing the budget for us, which has helped. Hopefully we'll have a bit bigger budget for next season, and that will set us up so that we can hopefully be more successful in the playoffs than we have been over these last 2 years. Played 6 playoff games between the wild card series against the Yankees last season and then the divisional series against the Angels this year, and we are 1-5 in those 6 playoff games despite having had the home field advantage. So that is definitely not what we've been looking for, and hopefully we can do better if we get back into the playoffs in the upcoming season. And with that, we will call it an episode. In our next episode, we will be back to kind of review the postseason, review the awards, start getting ready for arbitration, and kicking off our off-season activities. We'll make that decision on Nico Horner, find out what happens with Kyle Lewis, and then start figuring out what we need to do as a general manager to ensure that the Royals are back in the playoffs again next year. Until then, thank you so much for watching. If you have been enjoying the series, would really appreciate it if you like the videos, subscribe if you haven't yet, and always love to hear comments and what people are thinking, whether you agree with the decisions that I've made or not. So appreciate the thoughts, appreciate the interaction, and hope you have a great day.